All right, let's talk HubSpot properties, the do's, the don'ts, how to properly use them, all the different property types that there are, how to set up proper naming conventions so that you stay organized, so that you aren't like a lot of our clients when they come to us, running into tons of duplicates, data is all over the place, can't get anything accurate, not sure which properties to use, etc. You can relieve yourself of all of that in the future if you watch this video and follow the 3 steps that I'm going to lay down. Before I do that and I jump into my screen share, this is going to be a great video whether you are just getting started, brand new to the system, HubSpot, you're just getting the CRM implemented, or you have been on the platform for quite some time and you're running into the pain point that I just talked about, which is properties are everywhere, nothing's organized, you don't have naming conventions, you're not sure what properties are for what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. The first thing I'm going to talk about, which is step 1, is coming up with naming conventions for your business. Okay. Whether you're on HubSpot, you're on a different platform, this is going to be one of the biggest time savers. And it's uncommon for most companies to come up with naming conventions and stick to them. I can promise you that if you watch this video, I'm going to drop something below. It's a link to how we set up our naming conventions whenever we're bringing on a new client or we're doing anything for ourselves. You need to come up with these naming conventions. You need to make sure whoever your operations manager is, or if it's yourself or you're hiring a VA or whoever's doing this for you, they stick to your naming conventions. Okay. When you're looking for a property, when you're building a report, or you're setting up a CSP, which is a conditional stage property in your pipeline, or you need to find something for a filter, you want to be able to go into your CRM, know that the naming conventions are going to follow how you think this property would be named, so you can find things easy. You can be quick and nimble about actually getting stuff built, and you don't have to run around looking for properties. It's the number 1 time killer, and it ultimately builds up to something that's quite significant in terms of a problem later down the line, especially when you start cracking really big numbers in terms of sales and you have a lot of people moving. This is just going to save you a lot of time. Okay. Step number 2 that we're going to cover is basically foldering and properly organizing your properties. Okay. If you don't do this, you're not going to know where they're at, and you're not going to be able to make quick adjustments, add new things in terms of drop down items, etc. And you're just going to get lazy, just like most people do. I'm not calling you out. I do the same thing. And you're just going to create a new property for something that you could quite easily just go into another property, add a line item or add a drop down for. Okay. In step 3, I'm going to be covering all of the different properties in HubSpot, how they're used, what they should be used for, different use cases, and how to actually create them and keep it within your naming conventions and organize properly in your folders. So with that being said, let's jump straight into my screen share. All right, so we're going to jump straight in. The first thing I want to point out in terms of naming conventions is for step 1, naming conventions can be used for almost anything. Okay, and you guys should have naming conventions set up, especially if you're early on getting started in HubSpot. This is just going to save you an absurd amount of time later down the line, and it's going to keep things really organized, allow you to move a lot faster. Okay, so naming conventions can be used for emails. So anytime you send an email out, it can be used for all of your workflows. It can be used for sequencing, for forms, for lists, for workflows, all of the different features and stuff that you're going to be creating inside of HubSpot, where there's going to be a lot of them. I'd recommend coming up with a very good standard naming convention, just so if anybody on your team or your operations manager or anybody along those lines creates a new property, you yourself can easily go find it, and so can anybody else on your team following the naming conventions. Okay. Now, when it comes to properties, the first thing I want to point out, if you go into the back section here into settings and you go over to contacts or deals or any of these different properties, you can go in and you can click into groups. Okay. So step 2 is keeping everything very organized in groups, specifically when it comes to properties. If you're using lists or forms or sequences or workflows, you can use folders. Okay. Now, this should have a naming convention. So I just created an example, right? I've got application 2.0 VSL webinar. Okay. So let's say we're using a application. We need to create those properties so that we can sync it, or we're using a HubSpot form. So everybody that goes and applies to be on this webinar, we want these properties to all be in the same group. Okay. Now, the reason that you're going to want these properties within groups is because if you go into, for example, trying to find a trigger in a workflow, or you are building a report in the HubSpot dashboards, or even you're just using advanced filters, it's going to make it a lot easier to find your property based on the group that it's inside of. So you got contact activity, you have deal information, right? Order information, sales properties, calculated contact information, all of these different property groups that you're going to be able to easily just go either type in or find, and all of your properties that you're looking for are going to be right under that group. All right, so now that we have our group set up, this is going to be our next step, which is going to be actually creating the property. So if you are in HubSpot, you can click on this gear icon at the top right. It's going to take you into your settings. You're going to go down to properties. Okay. Now, based on the objects that you're trying to create a property for, right, whether it's a deal object or a contact object or a company object, ticket object, you're going to be able to switch back and forth between those right here where it says select an object. Okay. Now, all of your groups that we just created are going to be located right here. If we go back to the properties, let's say I want to create a deal property. Okay. All you are going to do is go to deal properties and then go ahead and hit create property. All right. So let's name this, for example, let's just say we wanted to create this property for discovery call, no show date. All right. So we're going to do no show date for our discovery calls, right? We're in the right deal object type. We're going to select the group. For this one, I'll use, for example, deal information or deal activity. And then if it's very self-explanatory, feel free to skip the description. I always create descriptions, especially for workflows or sequences or anything along those lines that has a lot more I would say you need to figure out what this thing is for. There's going to be a lot of workflows, a lot of different things that mean similar things. So you're going to want to always put some kind of description, especially as you grow. All right. Now going into the field types, there's a ton of different field types, and I'm going to go through them as an example here. So we've got single line text, multi-line text, rich text, phone number, date picker, date and time picker, single checkbox. You've got drop down select, calculation, roll up, score, property sync, file, HubSpot user. Okay, all these different properties have different use cases. So I'm going to start from the bottom here. HubSpot user is going to allow you to select any of the users in your account. So for example, if you have a setter owner property where you want to make sure that every time you delegate a lead, it goes to the setter owner property. So it can be static, meaning it doesn't change unless you change it or workflow changes it. You can go ahead and select HubSpot user instead of creating a drop-down select where you have to go and type all of the names of every single rep in your business into the properties. Okay. File is going to be anything for upload, right? So if you need to upload a PDF, you want to upload doc collection or anything along those lines, you have file. Property sync is very helpful and we use it all the time. Property sync is going to be in the use case of we have a deal property and a contact property that mean the same thing. And anytime the deal gets updated, I also want that to sync to the contact. So for example, the property that we're creating right now, discovery call no show date, this would be a great property sync to create. We would want the deal to have the discovery no show date. We would also want the contact. Okay. So we could create a sync between both of those properties. So if one gets updated, the other one will also be updated the same thing. All right. Now score, this is an interesting one. You can build deal scoring, lead scoring, application scoring. You can build your appointment scoring. All these different things can be in here and you can create all of your different positive. So if, for example, they fill an application and they selected, or let me just do this, number of times contacted, right, is equal to or greater than, let's say 10, right? We're going to give it some score, or we'll give it less score, or whatever you guys want to really do. Okay. So you can use the score property for a lot of different things. It's actually quite useful and we use it all the time. And then we've got calculation. Okay. So calculation, for example, let's say I wanted to, every time a deal is inside of closed one and it has an amount of, let's say $10,000 when it closes, I want to calculate the commission that I'm paying for that deal. And I want to bring that into, for example, a report so I can see all my commissions. You can create a format or a custom equation, and you can format that output type to be a number. And we're going to use a currency just like that. And what you can do is you can go in and basically just do insert property. I'm going to do amount, boom, and then I'm going to do times, let's say 10% or 0.01. This is going to take the amount anytime it's known. And inside of the deal one, you can also make it a conditional property if you need to. And this is going to give you the commission that you can use for obviously any of your reports or anything that you might want it for. The way that we like to use these calculation properties, especially for while we're on the sense of commission, is to give the reps a pipeline value of all of their appointments scheduled or in their red zone on what their commissions could be if they close out all these deals, and then their actualized commissions at the end of the month so that they can see what they made, what they could have made, what's left over from last month that they can still make this month. Okay. Continuing on, we've got drop down select, which is going to be obviously a one select. You can load all the options. That's something that's super, super quick. If you want to copy it from another property, you can do that. You could paste your own inside of here. It'll just make it a lot easier, and you can build presets if you want to as well. Okay. So for example, if I wanted to load all countries so I didn't have to type all them in, I can go ahead and load all those options. They're all going to populate. All right. Moving on, we've got select, we've got multi checkbox, we've got single checkbox, date and time. If I want today, which is October 3rd, 4 p.m., I need to use this, and date picker. Date and time picker is super valuable. Let's say, for example, whenever a lead gets delegated to a sales rep, I want to stamp it as the delegation time and date. Then I want to stamp another property that basically says when the first call outbound is made, right? Now what you can do is you can use a calculation property to get the time between, or the average time between, I should say, from delegation to first contact. So your speed to lead average per your actual sales rep, okay? So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this stuff. Single line text, multi-line text, all these different things that are super, super common, all right? So anyways, as soon as you're done with that, last thing is some of them will have rules. So you can set up rules, right? So minimums for characters. If you want it to be formatted properly in terms of phone number, you can put that inside, and then you can preview the property. Everything looks good. Awesome. I'm happy with it. And you can hit create. Okay. When you create that property, okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I don't want it here, but discovery call, no show date. It's going to populate right up in here. You can go ahead and click on more and you can clone it. You can choose a new property group if you want to. You can export it. Manage access. So if you want somebody else on your team to not have access to this, for example, if we go back to the commissions one, maybe you don't want everybody who's not in sales to actually see this, you can manage the access to that property so nobody else on your teams can see this specific property. You can also archive it and you can go ahead and get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it, archive, boom. All right, so that is a quick breakdown of all of the different things that you need to do in terms of step 1, come up with your naming conventions for everything if you can. Step 2, create your property groups. Step 3, create your properties and use the right property type. Okay, so with that being said, or a quick breakdown, If you want all of the properties that we create custom for all of our clients, specifically sales properties, the calculation, all that different stuff, just comment below property and I will drop you a link to a Google Doc that has all those properties and what you should be doing with them below. So with that being said, I will see you in the next video.